Hello students, this is Miss Mason, and today we are going to talk about what makes up rocks. Rocks are made of minerals, and minerals really are chemical compounds that have a definite crystalline structure and a definite chemical formula. So some examples of minerals are salt, and that is made of sodium chloride, NaCl. It forms crystalline structures. Quartz is another example. It makes up granite, calcite, gold, silver, aluminum, and even ice. Ice is considered actually a mineral.
The Grand Canyon is like the geologist's dream because the layers of rock really show the Earth's history and how the Earth changed over time.
So if you think of the layers as like a stack of pancakes, the oldest pancake is going to be on the bottom. So the first one that you make goes on the bottom of the stack. The last one you make goes on the top. So that's the way rocks are layered. All right, so the more recent rocks are going to be at the top, the oldest rocks are going to be at the bottom.
So here we have a picture of the rock formations within the Grand Canyon. And you can see at the very bottom, about 2 billion years old, we have what's called the Vishnu group. So this is the basement rock, and this is made from schist and granite. And the schist was produced, which is a metamorphic rock. It was produced when the North American plate collided with an ancient volcanic islands. And the next layer is called the Grand Canyon supergroup. And this is made of sedimentary rock. And then we have more sedimentary rock called the Tonto group. And Temple Butte, Redwall, and Surprise Canyon are next. And those contain fossils and are predominantly limestone. And then the next group is the Supano group. And this is sandstone and silt. And then the last group is sandstone, shales, and limestone. And this is the last section, or the most recent geological formation.
How did the Grand Canyon form? Well, it all started about 2 billion years ago. 2 billion years ago. There was a crash between ancient volcanic islands in North America. That crash created the metamorphic rock schist. Some of that schist was cracked, and some igneous rock was able to slither into those fractures and also form the basement of the Grand Canyon. Love cake. So if you see this layered cake right here, well, it looks good. Look at that cake. It should remind you of the Grand Canyon. So when you go to the Grand Canyon, you'll think of that cake, those layers. As you climb up or as you go down, you're going through those layers, just like the cake. And the older layers are at the bottom. So remember, the oldest layer is that schist layer, that rock, 1.8 billion years old. Can you imagine that, going down to the Grand Canyon? At the very bottom, you're sitting there and sitting on rock that's 1.8 billion years old. And it's interesting too, because the bottom of the Grand Canyon actually used to be mountain tops. So one time, that Grand Canyon, the bottom of the Grand Canyon was actually mountains, and tall mountains. They were actually taller than the Himalayas, but they wore down due to weathering caused by wind and rain. So the weathering and erosion really wore down those mountains. About 60 million years ago, there was tectonic plate collision of two convergent plates, that caused uplift. So uplift is like mountain formation. And actually formed the Rocky Mountains and the Colorado Plateau. The plateau is really like a high ground. It's elevated, but it's relatively flat terrain. So the ground's pretty flat, but it's high up. And the Colorado Plateau consists of part of Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico. So this uplift created by tectonic activity to the west, causing the Rocky Mountains to form and the Colorado Plateau to form. And when the Rocky Mountains formed, they collected a lot of snow on the top. And over time, that snow melted and formed small rivers. And then those rivers formed channels in the rock. Small rivers came together and formed larger rivers, and one of the rivers they formed was the Colorado River. And that Colorado River is like liquid sandpaper. It's just really sanding down that rock. And it's doing it every day. So it actually, the Grand Canyon becomes a little wider and a little deeper every day. And that Colorado River can carry about 500,000, really sanding down that rock. And it's doing it every day. So it actually, the Grand Canyon becomes a little wider and a little deeper every day. And that Colorado River can carry about 500,000 tons of sediment per day. 500,000 tons per day. So can you imagine how much erosion that is? I mean, remember, erosion is motion. Erosion, motion, erosion, motion. Got a dance going for erosion, motion. So weathering is wearing down. Erosion is when sediment is being moved from one place to another. The Colorado River is not only like a sandpaper, weathering, but it's like a conveyor belt. It moves that sand around. All right? It's like going, after you get off a plane, you got to go get your luggage. The conveyor belt going round and round, but it's carrying sand with it. And it's reshaping the surface of the earth. Is just wearing away, it's weathering the rock in the canyon. And it even is today. The Colorado River really formed the Grand Canyon, the canyon we see today, and it's still changing today, which is so awesome about geology and about science. It's always changing as we learn new things. And so rock on, rock stars, geology rocks, woo!